Welcome. I'm calling this video my Return to Traveler video. It's been about, well, pretty much almost 3 months since I've done anything with Traveler and my solo scout campaign. Real life, other videos, things have been kind of busy, but it's time to come back. And to do this too, I need to refresh my memory. So what I want to do in this video, if I can pull it off, is in a reasonable amount of time, is kind of do a review of all the resources I've collected and where we are in the campaign before we kick things off. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And I believe my return to Traveler. I mean, I did Traveler a long time ago when I was younger, but my return to Traveler actually began with finding this resource, Traveler Explorers Edition, which is a condensed version that basically lets you do scouts. I think that's what it does, but it has a number of key um, processes to pull that off. Now they do talk about traveler creation. It's mainly going to be the scouts, skills and tasks, combat, encounters and dangers, equipment, spaceship ops. That's important. And these are coming right out of the main Mongoose Traveler 2nd edition rules. Then we got space combat, common spacecraft, and here's a big one, world and universe creation. So basically, I did start with this one as my starting point. And then I also found, which we're going to look at later when I talk about solar resources, it's called Zozer, Zozer Solo Traveler, Zozer. And like I said, we'll look at it later. I was going to basically just use this with the Zozer and kind of give it a shot, give it a whirl. But then, things kind of snowballed. I've been doing this for a little while, and I said, well, we might as well get the main core rule book. And of course, the latest version from Mongoose is what they call the 2022 update, which has loads of information, stuff I've seen before, but then it adds stuff. But in my case, I was kind of focusing on traveler creation, skills and tasks. Haven't had a chance to have combat yet. That's going to be interesting. I looked at the encounters and dangers, spacecraft ops. You'll see later I did 2 videos on space combat, this one and CFIS. I kind of prefer the CFIS one, to be honest, but there's spacecraft construction, which later is helped with High Guard, common spacecraft, and back to world and universe creation, which is pretty much similar to what I did with this Explorers ebook. Now, there is also a starter 3-book set, but I don't think it's update 2022 compliant. I don't know how many differences there are, but you could do that with Traveler. But this is if you want to cut your teeth on Traveler and be a scout, this is a good place to start. And I think it's either free or really inexpensive on Drive-Thru RPG. But then you'll probably move on to the full core rule book here. Now, I did build you're probably not familiar, Vassal mod. I'm a serious wargamer, to be honest. And I've used Vassal to build and play war games on the computer because I don't have room to set stuff up. So I've been slowly, as I find these resources, incorporating or including the pertinent charts in here for each. So here you see I've got the Mongoose Traveler referee charts that came out of there. We've also got system mapping here. And they do talk about the primary. I'm kind of focused on the primary planet of the system that kind of defines this system. And initially, that's what you basically worry about. You don't worry about the other planets in the system, but then again, being a wargamer, I like a system to pretty much explain everything if I can, and I don't, and also being mainly a wargamer and not RPG, although I've done RPG in my past, I don't really want to, boil it down to simple questions, roll simple question. I want to have a system to build stuff out. And if you look at my previous videos, you'll see I did that, and, well, things unexpectedly went in ways I never anticipated, which is part of the allure of doing solo campaigning. You don't want to know where you're going. So anyway, I started here. Here's the world generate information. I think I'm pulling this in from Deep Space Explorer too. I'll pull that up later too. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Oh, here I'm even pulling in Classic Traveler checklist. So yeah, this actually looks like the regular setup here. So all those are available too. And then we've got, of course, Spaceship Ops, and these are based on notes I've taken from the main Mongoose Traveler, mainly focusing on jump travel here. It goes south, and we got some Starship Encounter rules here, which I may or may not use. Some alternate resources I use for that: remote ops, repairs, sensors. Um, and then I've even got, I think this is from the compendium or even from Zoser, time to land, landing. So a lot of guidance here, even here how to build a ship and the details, which I did use to modify a scout in the campaign. And this is coming from High Guard. Okay, but yeah, and then there's a traveler companion here. And again, and there's all sorts of rules here. I'm not using all of these, but I did focus on atmosphere and vacuum. Well, we got disease, toxins, and chemicals. The very first test explorer, I rolled a situation where the commander actually got some kind of toxin from plants and used that for their terrain conditions and movement for timing. Starports and spaceports. I think there was something in here about hard landings, gas giant operations. I used that one. That was interesting, and I ended up with our motley crew kept bouncing out of a gas giant in that first system they went. So I leveraged that. Um, so looking at that, yeah, that's the main rule books here. And again, all of these are available on Drive-Thru RPG. Now, if we're talking main rule books, the other one I did pull up is something called Cephas Deluxe. I think it's using the open license system, so it's similar to Traveler, which you can also get on Drive-Thru RPG. And here I got Cephas Deluxe pulled up. I think I've got this on Drive-Thru RPG. And recently put out. And it parallels Traveler, but it's using that open license version. And it's got all the stuff in here too. Yeah, moving through here. And actually I started incorporating some charts from it. And basic die roll conventions, etc. But it's very similar to Traveler, so we've got character generation. Some of these I haven't filled in yet, but like this nice tech level definition, robots, different kinds of weapons, probably very similar. Now the one area, and they've got ship design. Haven't done that yet, but this is the one area I did use it as I tested out space combat. Between this and Traveler Second Edition, and to be honest, I kind of preferred the Cephas version of Space Combat for small individual ships with crew participation. If I got into a full fleet battle, which I'd like to, I'd probably be using High Guard, looking at that for those resolutions. The World Gen is probably similar. Yeah, some of these I didn't fill in because they're similar, but I did like the non-player character. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm using my resources and picking and choosing what makes sense. And again, being a wargamer, I want to have as many charts and systems to take this out of my hands as instead of being a game master kind of thing where you're the focus and you're coming up with stuff. I'd rather have it generated. So this is another good resource. And like I said, I kind of settled on this one at least for Starship Ops. For space combat. They've even got a jump procedure here too. So I got a jump coming up. I'm going to evaluate the different ones because you're going to see there's other sources. Now, there are two other game systems and I'm not using them as my primary. I'm using Mongoose Cephas as my kind of D6 primary. But and their first one is called Star Forged, which is its own system. But again, it when I reviewed it, it has a whole bunch of cool charts for generating random events. I mean, that's kind of what I'm after here. And let me see, I'll pull that up here. Okay, here's Starforged again, available on Drive-Through RPG. Now let's see. Guess I need to make this a little bigger here, or get it down to one page. Yeah, nice little thing. And it's got its own backstory, which I'm not using. Um, and it's got this concept of momentum and its whole system. And we're going to see when I get to the solo system. This is interesting, but I'm not actually using this. What I'm mainly after is they've got a whole bunch of awesome charts. Actually, let me show you that because I've incorporated them over here. And you see with Starforged, here we go. And they've got their way of Oracle, ask your question, roll on the Oracle, check your result. I kind of use that a little, but again, we're going to see Mythic Emulator 2E is going to be driving that more. And then they got stuff about yes, no. And this is nice. You can build patterns and action and a theme to describe a situation, which I kind of used in the Kotar stuff. Here's a descriptor and a focus. And they kind of have rules on how to combine these. Action and theme go together, descriptor and focus. Something here with sector trouble and sector inspiration. And then this is what I like, space encounters. Okay, that's nice. Get some stuff going here, and you can generate sector names, spaceborne peril, etc. Planets, I'm not going to use this so much, but it could be used to keep it high level. Settlements on the planets. They talk about starships for random encounters. Can use that. So you can see and how to do an expedition. Their rules, which I may or may not use. See characters, descripting what they're acting like, creatures, potentially how they're acting. Here we have a faction concept. This looks interesting, encountering derelicts in space. That's something maybe to use. Ancient vaults, and actually I use this for Qatari. This is where we actually rolled in such a way that we ended up with that cube. So I did use this for Qatari. So as we go to the new one, I may, use a number of these charts here. But again, I'm using this kind of just to provide me charts and tables for random generation. But that's Star Forged. There is another one I recently came across, and I haven't finished consuming it, but there was an interesting quote about it. And it's called Stars Without Number. And I was reading some forums about it, and I read this interesting quote about random freeform game. Somebody recommending go with Traveler for random generation. Exploring, though, use Stars Without Numbers. So I'm kind of looking at this, and I've done some further reading on this, and they do have some good game masters come highly recommended. And I've got the free edition here. Yeah, game master resources, factions, sector creation. So, I'm probably not going to use this, but I am going to explore how I can incorporate this kind of stuff into my campaigns. That's Stars Without Number. Now, I do have other resources which I'll just mention. I have the whole classic Traveler. Gonna stick with Mongoose. I've got Mega Traveler, Traveler 4, Traveler 5, Traveler Next Era, I think it's called. I've got all those. And you're going to see, though, I used some specific resources from, I believe it's Mega Traveler, 3 resources from them, not the actual Mega Traveler itself. And then I did, with Space Combat, I started looking at the GURPS combat system that was present in the, I think it was Interstellar Wars component under GURPS, where they cover the initial battles of the Terran Empire. And I spent time, but GURPS is, the whole GURPS system is a system unto itself, and I did do some skimming, and it's got good reviews, etc. But it would almost be like I have to dive into GURPS separately, from Mongoose. So I kind of said I'm going to put GURPS on a back burner, and there is also a reprint. Mongoose did a 2300 AD, which is an alternative timeline that had some systems that I may look at, but from a system point of view, the big one is Mongoose Traveler second edition. You start, the Explorer one I showed you first or whatever, and then, complemented by Cephas because they're very similar, so that'll work together. And then I'm using Starforge and exploring stars without number, mainly from the point of view of using their charts and their random generation. Starforge, I was intrigued by the system, but that's been changed. When I get to the solo, you'll see that later. So those are my main, rule sets that I'm pulling from for this campaign. Now there are some key resources I use too, and I'd list some of those. And really, we have Starship Operation. It's from Mega Traveler. They had a Starship Operations book they made, a World Builders book, and a Pocket Empires. And if you look at my previous videos, I definitely dived into those for generating what we'll talk about later when we talk about where the campaign is going. I mean, I've generated pretty much 3 empires here, and I haven't fleshed out this one, but I started fleshing out these using those rather highly detailed tools. So here's the first one, the World Builders Handbook. And I had to scrounge around to find this. So I really can't. I'm not sure if this is on Drive-Through RPG, but this is it was made previous century, a detailed, and you can see it's somebody's scan here. I think I may have gotten this from scribd.com. But it's down in the weeds generation of worlds, which is mainly what I used it for. Here's your whole checklist, planetographer's checklist, and it's got lots of good detailed information. There was a number of these Mega Traveler and T4 sources. They go into the tools and how exploration is done. I'll just go through this real quick. The different types of survey equipment, really detailed, and then the different tools themselves, which is pretty good here. And then even life support, etc. Vac suits, kind of dabbled with those when we were talking about that first survey, and different types of device vehicles here. They've even got the breakdown. They like the Donesev class scout ship. I'm using the classic S, I guess class S scout, but they give details there. And then, of course, at the end, they talk about how to build a world. And this is each individual world in the system. It's not necessarily just the primary world, which we can generate through the standard traveler system there. This is getting way into the detail about, what's the star like, different sizes, etc. And I actually did this for a lot of the systems. I'll show you. I put this all in a spreadsheet. But yeah, this is, if I'm doing a regular RPG, why would you get in the weeds with this? But I kind of enjoy, let's map everything out. And this definitely does that. Even populations and etc. So that's the world builder, and I did incorporate that in my where is it? Planet Builder, it's called. Equipment. Okay, here's the world generation, and I basically the checklist, and then the different charts you were just looking at. And I got videos where I went through this. It is detailed. If you're, depends on your goals here. I'm just kind of OCD, going down in the details, mapping out the system. That I find interesting. It may not add anything to the story or the campaign, but you can break that stuff down. And I actually think I have my spreadsheet here. Show you my spreadsheet here. You can get an idea. I did use that for that one system, Qatari, the first one, which then snowballed me. My intent was to go and do Qatari and, kind of do a detail here of that planet, which I've done. This is the results from moving through the entire world builder system. So I have a very good idea of what's going on. Here's Qatari, that's where everybody is. But I also mapped out, I think that's 0707. Use something else for that, but I was able to. If I wanted to, I could then use that on the other planets in the system if that became necessary. Not quite sure what's going on here. Let's take a look again. There we go. So, for example, 0707 here, yeah, that's when we did. It looks pretty empty. I don't know what. Yeah, there's the main planet. I guess I didn't need to do it for Qatari, but I did it for these. Nope. Here we go. So Qatari, main planet, and then I did identify all the other planets in the system. And if I need to circle back and leverage World Builder here. So I did take the initial Traveler one here, and then I unpacked it more with World Builder. Now, what happened was I was using Starforged and random events, and I ended up with that whole cube, this vault or whatever they call it in Starforged, and then it just generated a story around it. Come to find out, it's the cube ended up being, the roles led me to people who were in there, and they were like caretakers, but then we found out kind of spun into their terraforming the planet for the neighboring Suran Empire, and then boom, we've got an empire, and now we're having to leverage a whole new resource here. This was, detailed planet generation. But then one of my viewers, I guess, mentioned the pocket empires. I wasn't aware of it, but I did go ahead and hunt that down. I think that was part of from Far Future Enterprises, the CDs you can order, which I did. And then I was able to get a copy of that. Here we go, Pocket Empires. So we can look at that. And again, this one, yeah, you can get from Far Future Enterprises. And I just started following this. This is detailed. Now, it does have a spin that your backstory, this is TNE, so the empire has fallen. Now everybody's trying to come back, and now you're trying to rebuild your empire. And it does get into family trees or, technology. And I just use it simply to generate NPC pocket empires. So I had to do a little finagling, but I did generate out of this two empires, the Suran Empire and the Zashan Empire. I don't know. I probably rolled on a table for those names. And the Surans here, these are these guys. They own these planets by color coding, and then the Zashan are right there on top of them. And I did through the rolling of factions, basically, they just coexist with each other. This one is a semi-religious caste system. This one is more progressive, but they're not really enemies or anything. This one up here I didn't generate yet, but interestingly enough, I did find out there's some pirate planets up here as I worked through these planets trying to figure out what they were. I haven't done anything down here, and that's actually where my crew is going to go next. But through Pocket Empires, there's a whole bunch of stuff too. If you wanted to play the turns against each other, you could, but here's where you start generating information. Starting to talk about their systems too, planning, and then an explanation of how each of these and what perhaps happened in the back with them. A whole bunch of economic system which I used to generate that background, planetary development, controlling the empire. So this could be a game in itself, this Pocket Empires. Anybody familiar with that? It's just playing the factions against each other. But again, I did use that to generate the Syrian Empire. Got kind of two birds with one stone here. These are the systems they own and the primary world in each system, and we use that starting point with our pocket empires to generate the information needed for those, and got an overall sense for what the empire was like. Okay. So again, is this, well, kind of affects my campaign, but again, I'm getting that backstory. And then the Zashan Empire. I think I only, nope, did it for all of them too. The different worlds. And I think a big one was population. You do see some end up being small populations, so they're not really contributing much. And their tech levels, I think they're both at tech level 12, and I think the Surans are at tech level 10. And luckily for the Surans, they're not at war. So kind of use the pocket empires there to generate that. And again, there's videos of me doing all that. So those were the three, I guess. Oh, and Starship Ops. I haven't shown you that one yet. This one I recently got. I had to wait and hunt around a lot for this one. And I'm hoping to use it now going forward. Here's Starship Operations. I think I've incorporated the charts here. Yeah, they were going to do more volumes, but they didn't do it. There's our traditional Beowulf. No table of contents. They explain how the maneuver drive works. And I think I've got some videos reviewing this. But to be honest, what I was mainly after was, I think, that's nice. Here we go. Start getting all sorts of charts here. General purpose used on other T-charts. So if I want to get into travel time, etc., it's got that. In system. Normal space, traveling, then they've got more normal space, and here's jump. And it gives a whole detailed, now this is what I may use now for my next jump, just to push through this system and see how it works. Use that, and then they got other systems going on, which could come in handy. I'll evaluate them. Wilderness refueling. Gas giants, I've got a system for that. And what they got, gas giant rings, oceans, etc. So potentially going to use that going forward. So again, like I said, I'm after the charts. And did I put that one in there? I don't. Oh, there it is. I got it. Okay, yeah. And I just grabbed those last charts at the end. So I'm probably going to use that. Try this out for this next jump. The Intrepid is going to do, probably to start exploring down this arm over here. So, and that's Starship Operations. The Traveler Companion has a bunch of stuff, and then there is I think there's Deep Space Exploration. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, here it is. Deep Space Exploration Handbook, Book 4 of, I believe, the Great Rift series. You can get it on RPG Suite. I mean, on Drive-Thru RPG. I may have gotten this with a Humble bundle. I'm not sure. But it's got some good stuff. Exploring deep space, stars, and interstellar phenomena. There's some good stuff here, which I've used. Coming down here, how to... Presence, yeah, that's the initial survey. And there's some starship operations, protostars, novas, supernovas, substellar, and then they get into this. They've got their own charts here, spectral class, of the ship, anomalies, rogue objects. You can roll for that. I've used this coming in. And here's the expanded star system. So potentially this this could be the starting point to generate the initial system, and then World Builder is there to flesh out initially the primary planet, but then later the other ones. And here they go into planetary bodies. Yeah, I think I use this one for my generating of a system. um, let's see, I think I do have it here. Maybe I didn't incorporate it here. System mapping. Yeah, it looks like I did. Here we go. Rogue objects. You get that? And world moons. Yep, this is right out of there. Number of planetary bodies. So this would be the initial system mapping. Use these to come in and then move to the maybe the world generate. If you want to quickly generate the primary system, and then the world builder to go in more detail. But this was a good resource, this Deep Space Handbook, for that initial system mapping. So, and again, you can get that in the usual places. Stuff I haven't used yet, but I potentially will, is High Guard. There's a 2022 version. I've got the Element Cruisers. Maybe do a Navy campaign. I've set the stage for corvettes to show up for initial patrolling, so I could leverage those at some point, or maybe our crew will run into them. There is a Flynn's Guide to Alien Creation, which I haven't used yet, which you can use to generate what your aliens look like. Starforged had some tables for that, but I may look at that if I run into anything else. And then, let's see, we're at 32 minutes. I know this is long. Here's something called RPG Suite. I didn't go into this, but I did spend time identifying my characters. You probably remember Burnett, Bono, kind of showing my age here. Yes, you can guess that's short for Captain Carol Burnett, Astrogator Bob Newhart, Surveyor Mary Tyler Moore, Engineer Sonny Bono. So that's my crew of the Intrepid. I do have another ship out there they've run into, the X Endurance, being run by a friend of Captain Bernhardt's who's kind of paid out, but they gave him a scout ship, and we did see in the space combat he souped it up a bit. And there's probably suspicions he's working for Imperial or Naval intelligence in the area. I've got a backstory around that these new empires out there that we found were known, and he's out there trying to gather info. So those two are manning the Endurance. So, and I've used this. This is a pretty good tool. You can use it for character generation. I'm using it mainly just to store the information on my characters here. And I think I demoed it in a previous video, but it's RPG Suite. Go to rpgsuite.com. It's you buy it online, and then you can track things here. And they've got more stuff. You can look at it. But I was playing around with this to kind of store this stuff so I can pull it up before I had it on spreadsheets. But I did do a whole backstory, etc., on all my characters based on that. So those were the Traveler specific resources. So basically the overall rule sets, we've looked at Mongo's Traveler 2E, Cephas Deluxe, and then kind of supporting Starforged, and I'm still looking at Stars Without Number. And there's other ones out there, Classic Traveler, GURPS, T4, T5, a whole bunch of stuff. If you want to get the older Traveler stuff, go to Far Future Enterprises. Just Google that on the web. They'll sell you the CDs. I've obviously just copied the CD contents, and there's a whole bunch of material. My problem is I don't have enough material. My problem is understanding all the material and figuring out the best way to use it. Now, the next one and a big component for me was the solo portion here. And I do have a number of tools for solo. The first one I did start out with was something called Zoser. So let me pull that up. Okay, here's Zoser, and it you see it as solo RPG campaigns for the Cephas engine. Well, Cephas is based on Traveler. They're similar, so I think they're interchangeable. Don't think that's a problem here. And they tell you how to do solo campaigns. Now they do give their background on how to do stuff, solo approach, payload, character reactions. And then he's got this thing of the plan, write it down. I didn't really use that. But he's got NPCs, storylines, random lines. But here's the thing: there's campaign guide, framework for travelers in general. I believe, traders, I guess, merchants. Well, here's star traders, and then naval officers and survey scouts. So, I'm interested in both of these, to be honest. So this is what drew my attention. And like I said, I initially started out with the Explorer version of Traveler, focused at scouts with the basic rules, and I was going to combine it with this and play through, and then I just spun out of control with all these resources I found. But there's some great stuff, great charts here, and probably the better way to show you is they give a checklist here, talk about how to do your scout, great suitable characters, 3 life events. I did that for most of my characters and all 4 of them, so it gave interesting backstories. Found out my engineer and my captain were married and got divorced, and there's a whole backstory there. PC relationships, etc. So some good stuff here. And then a specific one, since this is a scout, jumping from world to world for starport encounters. Use that to find out trader vessel was impounded right before they left, which fits into my story later. Starship encounters, didn't get a lot of those. Onboard events, because when you jump, it's 7 days, no matter where you're going. So what happens when that's going on? Enter a new system. And then they talk about surveying the system and getting discovery points, which I kind of used. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but again, it's the charts I'm after. Here's a pretty, you're in the starport, stuff that happens. Here's a ship encounter, depending on what route you're on. And then what's the ship type you run into. This is for Frontier. And then more ship type information. Large transport information, small transport. What's their reaction to you? Okay. And then, hey, what happens when you're in transit? Okay. All of those are good seeds. I do have the planet survey checklist also, not as detailed as I've evolved to. They've kept it simple here. And then they give you survey targets. If you're going to land, what you're going to look at. Now, in our case, when they initially were kind of doing their go through the motions, they surveyed a planet in the place where the scout base was, just to go through their stuff. And I used this for it, and that's where we found out Captain Bernhard got some kind of toxic infection from a plant. Qatari, they didn't land. They send down a drone, maybe, because of the cube that Starforge generated. Totally unexpected, which then, of course, spun off into pocket empires up here and all sorts of other stuff. But there's good stuff here. Survey problems, deal with it. I think I worked through this whole system in my initial one way back. And then they talk about the different worlds you're going to and what are the things you want to explore. And, ice balls, rocky world planet. They get into land. Intelligent life. Are you going to find it? Yeah. When I did Qatari initially, there was no villages, intelligent life, but Starforge made this cube. You can go back and listen, and that's where the campaign took on a world of its own. I mean, it wasn't just a simple matter, okay, let's go to the next one and explore. It spun out, and I, got to do pocket empires, and that's kind of what I want in a solo campaign. I don't know what's going to happen next. Then they got some good stuff here, survey problems, gaining survey points, maybe a measure of how well you're doing. Don't know if I'm going to use that. So, but this was great to start. It's planted the seed. Hey, let's do a solo traveler campaign. Now, if I do talk about solo, Starforge has a little one, but this is the big one. This one pretty much changed it all. Mythic Emulator. Let me pull that up. And it recently came out a month or two ago. Second edition, not the first. Okay, here it is. Again, drive-through RPG. Vast majority of this stuff, you can pick it out. But this is pretty good. It introduced some concepts, kind of providing a framework for the whole solo campaign. And I think what jumped out at me was, there's some good reading here. And they break it up into these portions. They explain it here. You got your fate questions. Kind of standards like the Oracle question, pose the question, see what the answer is. They got some modifiers for it. There's this concept of chaos factor, and I did a video on this a few months back. And this is all good. This is all good stuff. Don't ask too many questions. Guidelines how to respond to it. But then they got this concept of random events too, which is again another good source. This is the one that I like. This provides, in my mind, the framework. This concept of scenes. So basically, you break up your campaign into individual scenes, and then as you start the scenes, you identify the participants, etc., that are in there. Kind of get a chaos factor, and then the events are applied against them. And then you've even got concepts of, okay, the scene is supposed to be this, but depending on the chaos factor and what you roll, it's something entirely different. And then you have to change that. So it does cause you to have to rethink each you don't know going into a scene, you're saying it's probably going to be this, but then based on the rolls, it could be tweaked or it could be completely changed, something else happens. Which introduces, random, you don't know what's going to happen. And this is what really I liked, this framework. So like our crew here, the fact of jumping will be the first scene, and you go through, follow the rules, see what happens, use some of the other resources, see what happens during the jump, etc. But then they arrive in system. Then that's a new scene. The initial plan, mapping of the system from a distance, let's say. And then, in my mind, the rule you always play is before you do anything, you find a place to refuel and load up your tanks. So again, the refueling is a scene. Stuff can happen. Who knows? I mean, depending on what you roll. And then the next scene potentially is, okay, now you travel to the primary world of interest, I guess. That's a scene. And in each scene, you're building a whole framework. These are the things participating. This is chaos factor. Is it what you expect, etc. And then I can, leverage in the random encounters. So this I really like. This when I read this, it's like, aha, I've got my framework. I'm going to operate scene by scene. So I highly recommend this resource. And there's a bunch of other good reading here. And then they got so many tables. I can't even incorporate them all, to be honest. So, and this is for solo campaigning. Discovery, fake, all sorts of sheets and tables. I could go to the end and show you. So many I didn't even incorporate them all. Yeah, there we go. All sorts of stuff. Descriptive words, etc. So this, and here we go. Here's that tested the expected scene. Roll over the chaos factor, you're okay. It's what you expect. Roll odd within chaos, alter it. Or this is, something changes. You come up with it, however you want to. This is the one where, you think you're going to jump, but you don't because something else happens. So that's, this is, I find incredibly, interesting here. And then even how, if you got to adjust this scene, these are, you could roll against this to say, what do you do? Remove a character. Well, it's scary. Add a character, reduce, etc. And that's where you go to that list of participants. in the scene, which could be player characters, non-player characters, ships, who knows, whatever makes sense. The environment, you're on a planet, etc. So this is providing, in my mind, a great framework. And notice I got NPC behavior tables, statistical tables. This, I don't know about, I'll think about that. This is a system within this on threads, etc. Here we've got your discovery questions, player versus PC knowledge. And again, I incorporate the charts here, scenes, scene altered, kind of big. There they are. So this one I'm really excited about, and I think this will provide the framework for the campaign and the way to insert stuff into it. And I've been using it also to document the campaign. This scene, here are the people involved, and then document what happens. Okay, so I highly recommend this Mythic 2E. And again, it's available on. Don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I got it through Drive-Thru RPG or Wargame Vault. That's the same company, but I highly recommend this if you're doing solo. Game Master Emulator, second edition. It's well, and I give it a high check mark there. And then finally finish out. I've got the two combats. If I got space combat, ground combat. Space combat, I got two videos on that. One where I'd used just kind of small scale battle here between these the Surin ship and the two scouts. I came up with some reason why it's attacking the Endurance when it's out there. You can listen to the video, and I just use that as an excuse. In real life, when I rolled this, the Surins just said, "Okay, get out of the system. Don't come back for 3 weeks." The Endurance showed up. Interestingly enough, the Intrepid intended to jump back to the scout base and dump the info, but when they went out to the jump diameter, I'll call it that, I don't know what, 100 or 200, I rolled, and basically the Endurance was waiting for them and did a tight beam transmission, and I actually rolled that these Surins detected it. Rolled kind of high. That was pretty impressive. And then based on that, I rolled their reaction, and they said, just leave. So the Intrepid got new orders and said, no, just dump your info to us, because it had been lurking there the whole time, and go ahead and start jumping down this chain. Figure out what's over here. So that's going to be our next scene now, is the Intrepid is going to prep up, spin up, and here's the Intrepid. Spin up and do a jump. And start seeing what we find here. And who knows, with all this system now and charts and tables, I have no idea. I think I do have at least the primary system somewhat defined. That's it. Based on that, it's got 0 population right now. X, that's pretty big, but that's what World Builder is for. Gonna detail out what's going on with this planet, and then map out the rest of the system too. And then leverage my scenes and tools and random events to see if they encounter anything out of the ordinary. So yeah, that's the next step here. And of course, when we come back now, once I've gone through all these and I'm kind of get back in the flow, I'll start doing, I guess, a video per scene to see what happens as they move down this chain until they have to return back to the scout base. And I've even got a whole nother campaign now set up. They got the word that the Navy is sending a small squadron, I guess I said 3 corvettes, or patrols. I've got the ship picked out. I've got to pull it up. But then that becomes a vehicle to maybe interact with, and or the basis now for a naval campaign going forward in this area. So and that's where I'm at. So I did go really long here. We're at 50 minutes, but I did want to show you all the tools now, from its humble beginnings of just the Starship, the Traveler Explorer that has the basic rules, and you can do the Scout campaign. And then I found Zoser but it's pretty much spun out of control here. When I got into World Builder, Pocket Empires, Starship Operations, um, so this is cool. The last thing I did actually, and then we'll close it out here, is I was writing narrations for each of these, but it kind of got tedious, so I'm not done with this, but I did kind of experiment with something that's in the news of recent. ChatGPT. I went out to ChatGPT and did some testing. I didn't, it wasn't a greatest near, but gave some parameters to ChatGPT and told it to write a sci-fi story. I got Serenity there. I gave it parameters and it did an okay job of writing stories, or at least giving the framework. So I'm thinking as we go forward, I'm going to, as each scene goes by, I'll put the information in ChatGPT and see what kind of story it generates here. I can live this. A menacing pirate ship known as Black Nebula suddenly appeared on their scanners. Quickly assessed pilots, and it goes into this stuff. What did he do? Rather than engage, he initiated evasive maneuvers. It's interesting. It'll require tweaking, but it does, it's interesting exercise. Interesting. I know ChatGPT is being used for all sorts of other stuff, but if you give it the parameters, it can write a okay story to start, but probably need some more tweaking beyond that to add to it. So, but anyway, I think I have talked long enough. I want to stay under an hour. But I did list a whole bunch of tools and resources out. All of these are pretty much available. Drive through RPG. I'm not being a salesperson for them. It's just, that's if you want electronic copies, or you can go to the actual publishers. But you can get to the publishers through that also. But with that said, now I'm going to kind of get my notes together, etc. And hopefully the next video here soon will be the ISS Intrepid calculating and starting the jump. And maybe the jump time. I'll do that in the next video. And then the next scene after that would be, hey, we're in system. Let's map out the rest of the system and go from there. And use all these resources I'm shown. And hopefully I can put a list of these resources in the comment section. But again, to end, sorry this is a long one, but I did want to kind of circle back here and now say this is from a resource point of view what this has turned into. Now I'm obviously going into way more detail than your average RPG campaign, but obviously that's my wargamer background, OCD. But I am excited. I'll end with this, providing a solid framework now to carry out the solo adventure, and then all the other resources, providing the tables and the guidance and the detail to actually build a rather detailed system or subsector here. There's all sorts of information here to understand that. So anyway, if you got this far, thank you very much for listening. If you like, click like, subscribe if you haven't. But otherwise, we will, next time we see you here, hopefully soon, the ISS Intrepid will be calculating its jump and proceeding to our next system, which hasn't got a name yet, but I've got tables for that. So anyway, see you then, and thanks for listening.